going to move in today with some 9-speeds. We have an absolute slew of 9-speeds in front of us today because, in my opinion, it's the most important slot in anybody's bag. It's certainly the most important slot in mine. Currently have 5 9-speeds in the bag because each one has every degree of stability, and it fills that slot of left, a little left, straight down the middle, a little to the right, and really to the right.
All with 9-speeds.
All with 9-speeds, yes.
So that's what's that distance range?
For me, it's between 350 and 400. 350, 400.
So all of them, just depending on what flight characteristics are required for the shot.
Mostly dependent on wind, the shape of the hole, yeah. Each one has a job to do. And I'm using them off the T-pad 9 times out of 10. There's only a select time where I reach for a grace or a trespass.
Got it. This is so impressive. When we consider what we did last week with the 11 speeds, and I know we didn't have all the 11 speeds that were out there, but this is absolutely incredible to have that kind of...
It's got to be double compared to what we had for the 11s.
Yes.
We grabbed every 11 in the store, one of each. And this is one of each of the 9s in the store right now.
The Maya was the only one of the 11 speeds that I wanted to give it a little shout out to because I think it's a fantastic disc at 11 speed.
That's one we missed because that is a really, really important disc.
It is.
That's what the Jet was before the Jet.
Yeah. Yeah, what a great disc that is. But we're on the 9 speeds, and I'm excited to hear you talk us through this. So settle in, everyone. Grab yourself something to drink. Joe's going to break down the 9 speeds rather, and give us an idea what might fit best in your bag.
Okay.
So you're starting with...
I'm going to start with Trilogy because that's what I bag, and I think that they've got the best variety and selection of 9 speeds. So the one that ended up on top here just by accident is one we've covered before, is the Jade. Its flight numbers are 96-21. It's an easy-to-use driver. Most of these are going to be on the lightweight side. I believe they've got a couple runs of the 170 carat, they call them, where they end up heavier. But typically known as a beginner disc, I've thrown a couple of these at low power, and they held onto a hyzer. I could still put 50% power on this and not completely turn and burn it.
Right.
And get 350 feet with it.
I can tell you for older players, beginners, it's a great disc. We talked about it in episode 2 or 3, and
it was earlier. Yeah,
it's a wonderful disc for, I would say, arm speeds under 55 miles an hour. Than anything above that, obviously, it's more of a finesse disc. Right?
I'd agree with that.
Okay,
awesome disc. Next one is the polar opposite of a Jade, the Pioneer. This is an absolute meat hook of a disc. This is like a Felon on steroids, which is why Albert Tom actually likes these.
If you throw that up to them, they'll be able to see that angle.
Oh, there
too.
we go.
They can see that angle on the side angle.
Yeah.
Like this?
Oh, the profile.
There you go. Profile it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
If I can't match the lens.
That looks meaty.
It's a meaty disc, yeah. Like I said, it's a Felon on steroids. And that's actually why Albert Tom likes these, is because he finds more consistency out of the complete meat hook of this compared to a Felon. Felons can be kind of touchy, which is actually why I bag 2 of them, because one's really overstable and one's kind of overstable.
Interesting. Depending on the plastic?
Yes.
Okay. Albert, shout out.
Next up is a newer release, the Honor. This one caught a lot of attention early on as being a Thunderbird, but glidey. And I've got a couple of friends that have thrown these to really, really good avail. They've managed to get 350 plus on a pure hyzer, like coming out at a 30 to 20 degree angle here and holding onto that angle while still pushing forward a lot.
Wow.
So this is a really, really cool disc. I'm definitely intrigued by this one. I'm not sure if it would fit in between. I kind of like having the minimalist. That's what I learned from Rick, at least. Less molds, less mistakes.
That plastic feels really good. This is
Royal Grand and Supreme is some of the best on the market. I'm completely obsessed with that stuff.
Yeah, feels a lot like a Star, but plastic, but it meatier maybe.
They do say it beats up fast, but I think it beats up well. It doesn't beat up to be unusable like certain plastics do.
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
All right, next up is this is a great disc. This is the disc that replaced my Valkyrie or my Jackalope as my farthest flying 9-speed. So this is a disc that I can push 400 feet with. There's 3 of them in the bag, 2 ices, 1 supreme, because again, one goes left a lot harder, one goes straight, one will really turn over to the right. So I just grabbed this one because it was nice and bright and pretty. The only complaint I have about this disc is it doesn't really have a whole ton of ground play. So when I really hit the ground well with it, or what I think I'm going to get a good angle to get some forward skip and get that extra distance, I don't typically get out of this disc.
And that's saying a lot being in Arizona, because this is where you get ground play.
Ground play city, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the ground is so hard here in the winter and in the summer that typically your discs are going to bounce and get an extra 50 to 100 feet out of it potentially. Where these ones, the rim just tends to grab. It doesn't skip like a Felon wants to, or like a Destroyer wants to.
Well, that's interesting. Well, it's going to grab even more in grass.
Yeah, so, right, thick grass. Good luck.
Hmm.
My only complaint about that disc, I still can get 400 feet with it. I blew past hole 14 the other day. It was insane. Hatchet.
Love it.
That's an important disc, because this is very similar to the Escape. I'd say the rim looks to be a little bit shallower. The shoulder comes down a little bit farther. So the rim is just kind of a little angled farther down this way, which typically makes the disc more understable. The high parting line is what makes the disc more overstable. So the fact that this one comes so far down definitely makes it more of a turnover type disc. This is an old guy's dream.
I agree.
A lot of people like the Hatchet.
I love it. It doesn't require a lot of effort, and you'll get 350 feet out of that. No problem.
Just make the disc do the work. It's got a lot of glide, so
just get it in the air, it goes.
Get the spin on it.
Wonderful, wonderful disc.
The Fury is the Latitude 64 version of the Hatchet, is what I feel like. It looks fairly similar. It's got a little bit more of a blunt nose on it and a little bit more of a shoulder here on top. My partner here really likes these discs because he can use it for hyzer flips through the trees, or even trust it on an anhyzer to keep the anhyzer. They call it a 9.6 minus 2.2. I haven't quite seen a 2 fade out of this. You know, every company's numbers are a little bit scattered, but I don't think this thing has as much fade as it lets you believe.
It's not coming back.
If you throw it flat.
As a true 2.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Felon. It's another very, very special disc. Everybody needs this type of disc in their bag. An overstable 9-speed, because this is what ends up being a lot of people's utility driver. Their forehand, backhand, roller, overhand. This disc can do everything because you know what it's going to do. It wants to fade. So any angle you put it on, it's going to fight out of it. And we already mentioned it once today. Plastics make a world of difference. I've noticed in this fluid plastic, this disc ends up being a lot straighter. And it doesn't get as much ground play, which is pretty useful. I currently don't bag one because I have the Supreme, and it flies identical to the Supreme, only my Supreme actually gets ground play. So I can trust it to fade out and skip, which I kind of like.
Like a Raptor Eye from, I know it was more of last season, but...
Like the Raptor Eye Felon?
Yeah. How would that compare to something like that?
Pretty similar, actually. The Raptor Eye Felons were a little bit flexible, not as
flexible.
flexible.
We saw Ricky throw them in the Tour Championship.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, and a lot of people, when they first dropped, absolutely loved it because it really wasn't a Felon. It was like a stand up and kind of turn over a little bit disc before it had a nice solid fade at the end. So it was more of like my Escape, my Ice Escape, trusting that it could stand up and go straight and then have that solid fade.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, last but not least, the Saint. This is the Latitude equivalent of the Escape. Super glidey, 9.7 minus 1.2 they call it. I used to throw a Saint back in the day. It was one of the first new discs that I had bought, and it would go almost dead straight. As much power as I could get on it, it would pop up and go straight without any fade. It was a pretty cool disc, and I was hit some early frustrations of why can't I get this thing to go over 300 feet? Well, you're new, and it's hard to get rotations on the disc, but the fact that I could make a Saint go straight with the hyzer flip up straight as a newbie was really special.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit underappreciated in a lot of new players' bags. Figuring out how to make a disc do what it's supposed to do. That's a good disc to do it.
So just with that stack alone, is it really just because there's a lot of similarities. Some obviously have more fade than others, but is it does it become how it feels in your hand, the feel of the plastic? Maybe you're loyal to a brand. What do you tell someone that's coming in to the store that is looking to throw something a little further than what they maybe currently have? Maybe they have a 7-speed that they've gotten out there now. Now they feel like they can jump up to the 9-speed.
Well, that's the perfect progression because already you've started at the 7 and you're getting that to do what it's supposed to. Now you want to jump up to a 9. Well, are you a forehand player? Because you're going to need something more like this, the Felon. As far as feel in the hand, yeah, it is a confidence thing. When you feel it in your hand, you kind of feel like it fills your hand really well. The flashing isn't too much. It fits your palm.
Right.
Because everybody's hand size is different too. So
correct.
I've got smaller hands. I kind of like shallower discs, and I'm meeting more and more people that kind of feel that way.
Okay.
Not everybody's got baseball mitts like Ricky, where you can just putt with daggers,
right,
and make it look good.
Right. Yeah, very deep.
Super deep. So
that's fantastic. Well, a lot of choices and a lot of reasons to look at Trilogy on your 9-speed.
The 9-speed radar, yeah. Trilogy's got every one of them, left, right, and center, man.
That's incredible.
So next up,
Castoplast.
Castoplast is my favorite new brand out there. There's a lot of new companies out there, and Castoplast has really hit the nail on the head with what they're trying to do with their discs. I've been really, really impressed with their stuff.
Me too.
The one right on top here is the Falk. This is the equivalent to my Escape. It is a hyzer flip machine. I've got a Glow one that goes almost straight with a really nice, reliable fade. So I can still get 400 feet out of it on a hyzer flip up to straight flight. This one's on the stiffer side.
That's why it's I love how my Escape is flying right now.
Yeah.
And I'm really getting distance out of it. But the Falk has always been a favorite, and I don't know what to bag. I honestly don't, because to your point, do you thin your bag down to keep your decision making in a minimalist mind frame, which is really probably the right thing to do, because you play the course. You want to fight against your disc decision making. You want to simplify that decision making so you can play the course. So it's it's really going out into a field, and which do you throw the most consistent, time and time and time again?
Yeah, narrowing down will certainly help.
Narrowing down.
And figuring out which one's working more consistently.
But
they might work both the same, and you just got to focus on one and figure it out and really dial it in.
Yeah.
Because you can get a couple different Falks. They've got a K1 and K1 Soft Falk so far. And the K1 Soft is really gummy, as the name would suggest. It's something that's going to hit a tree and not kick 200 feet into the woods. It's actually going to kick not as much as a K1. That's kind of something really important for the wooded areas to keep in mind. Gummier discs, especially your drivers, you don't want to kick off into the jail.
That's a great point.
You'd rather hit and stick into the fairway potentially.
That's a great point.
Next up, we've got the Stall. This is a really, really unique disc. High parting line. A lot of these I see have a bit of a uniform dome on it. Really, really overstable disc. Really overstable. They call it a 9403. I've thrown these for a period, and they're definitely meatier than that, I would say, in my experience.
Meatier than a Felon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like a mini tilt almost for the wing of it. The parting line is really high. The rim is kind of strange. Feel in the hand, though, this plastic is just killer.
Yeah.
It's so tacky and stiff, and God, I feel like I can pump this as hard as I possibly can, and I know exactly what it's going to do.
Castoplast.
That's all you can ask for is confidence in a disc. So this one ended up in the wrong pile. This is a Vandal. Dynamic Disc Vandal.
There you go.
Hate to backtrack.
Another big
that goes
stacker
right there.
So where's the Vandal fit in all this?
Vandal's it's pretty similar to the Escape for me. It's a little bit more on the understable side.
What are the numbers on that? Do you know?
9.5 minus 2.1, and that's
so
have decimal points in there somewhere, and I just
it's going to turn and have just that less fade return.
Yeah. These are the Fusion X. This is when Valley Monte Honda was with DD.
Okay.
Yep, last year's Tour Series.
Okay. So Castoplast back, and then we've got some
arguably one of the more popular companies, the Discmania.
Discmania.
Discmania. They've got some good, not good, great. They've got some great molds out there to choose from. Well, the one right on top here is the Vanguard. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback on these. It's supposed to be like a Thunderbird, from what I'm hearing. And these came out with a little bit of dome. The plastic is absolutely killer. Really reminds me of the Supreme or the Royal Grand plastic. It kind of looks similar too with this nice pale blue.
Well, they're all under the same house now, so those plastics are going to start.
Yeah, what a move that was.
Yeah.
Way to go, House of Discs, man. I hope they really do it well. Next up is the FD3. This is that felon job that I mentioned earlier. Everybody needs an overstable 9. This is the overstable 9. And this one's a glow Discmania Open stamp, which was fun. Nice and stiff, nice and flat. The edge feels just like a felon. The shoulder's nice and high, which really reminds me of a Firebird. This one's different. This one's an Instinct. You liked the Instinct for a while.
Essence.
Oh, you liked the Essence. I thought you liked the Instinct. You know what? This one's not even a 9, is it? This one's a 7. Wrong pile. Thought that was an Essence.
So you thought it was an Essence?
Yeah, I thought it was an Essence by the stamp of it, because it was the mystery box stamp.
And I think an Essence is still an 8, maybe. But yeah, Essence, great disc.
That's a nice disc.
Beautiful.
It's kind of a sidewinder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it more stable than that. But
last but not least, in the well, and I don't have all of the Discmania 9s available to me at the moment, but Splice. This is that FD3, although these are notably more overstable according to
that rim's crazy.
The critics. Yeah, this is a pretty wild disc. It's a lot like the Mutant. That's really blocky, really flat, really stiff. I'm sure this is a meat hook's dream. If you've got an absolute cannon of an arm, you can make use of that.
What if you don't?
If you don't, it's going to dump a lot earlier, and you might want to just get a disc that is plenty overstable for your arm, because this is just a little bit obnoxious. It's like a Zone OS. Does anybody really need a Zone OS?
Right. it's falling out of the sky before you even get it out of your hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't even get a chance to get rotations on it. It wants to fade.
It just wants to go back down.
Higher probability of error.
Yeah.
Discraft up next.
Undertaker, heard a lot about it.
Yeah, Undertaker. This was Paul Macbeth's go-to, and a lot of people compared it to the Eagle. And looking at it, it has a pretty small rim for a 9-speed. It looks about a little, maybe a millimeter bigger than the Instinct is. Really nice neutral flying 9-speed. This is kind of a tunnel carver, and it's fun to manipulate angles on discs like this one to make it push right the whole way and even skip right if you get your angles right. Hyzer will hang onto the hyzer. You can hyzer flip it if you power up on it. Very, very popular disc, the Undertaker. Next up is a 10-speed. The Heat. Back on track, 9-speed. Heat is one of the most popular distance drivers on the market. And we call it a distance driver because it really is built to stay in the air forever. So you can get max distance out of a 9-speed rather than trying to pump a 12, where you might see more consistency out of this rather than trying to force out a faster disc. This has been a really popular option for people. People use it on rollers, hyzer flips, big air shots. Feels pretty good in the hand. It's got a very Roadrunner feel on the rim. It kind of bulbs out on the bottom here, where most of them are more concave. This one is the opposite. It kind of rounds and fills your palm up a little bit, which I'm sure makes it an even more popular option.
I always find that makes it easier to throw, especially if you're going to throw it in terms of a roller, if you're right-handed. If you have that feel in the hand, it helps sort of get that hand in position to get that.
Well, that's something that I definitely praise, or not praise, but I preach to people, is surface area. You get as much surface area on the disc as you can to get the real feel for it.
Right.
That's what's worked for me. I know it doesn't work for everybody. Ricky fan grips. I mean,
right.
Any which way you can get spin on these discs, whatever's working for you, stick with it.
Yeah. I know fan gripping and throwing 600 feet doesn't seem like the two go together.
I don't understand it at all.
So I'll reach out for the Innova for you.
Yep. And I thought I had a lot more selection for Innova, but
On 9-speeds?
Yep.
Well, you do. You have these two.
Oh, there they are. Those are the ones. So let's start with the Sidewinder because this is an awesome disc. It's a great disc. And I've seen a lot of Sidewinders fly. Just played with a guy at League this past week who had a champion Sidewinder, and he would throw it out on an Anheuser. This is not a small arm, mind you. He throws just as far as I do. And he's throwing a Sidewinder out on an Anheuser, and it's slowly fighting out of it. It's probably the most overstable Sidewinder I've ever seen fly. But this is known as a pretty understable hyzer flip bomber for most people. And you see a lot of U-disc guys touting, the only disc I can break 400 feet with is the Sidewinder. And they'll measure their throw out there to say, this is my best throw ever, 430 feet. Sidewinder. Just works. Great disc, that one. Thunderbird. This one's been very widely used by the pros at Innova. A lot of guys like the Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Most famously, I would think Jeremy Colling would be the one. He's been having Tour Series Thunderbirds for quite some time because he's a forehand expert. And this is one of those discs that you can really trust on a lot of different angles to throw your Thundy and get a lot of distance with it. Back when I threw one of these, it was pretty overstable. So I could trust it over water. I could trust it into a headwind. It's oddly similar to a Firebird. The Firebird's known as more overstable. I found my Star Thunderbird to be pretty overstable, like a Felon. So
it's really pretty too.
Yep, good utility driver, that one.
I'm not sure that plastic can get any better either.
Their Halo stuff is gorgeous.
Wow.
And they're making it more available, which is why we actually get to have one in the stack today, which is nice.
At 173, that is meaty.
That's a hefty disc. So this disc holds a special place in my heart, the Valkyrie. This is the first faster disc I managed to turn over, the 9-speed. And it would have just as much turn as it did fade. So I could really, really pipe this thing down a gap and trust it to stand up and turn and get me that 350 feet. As you're developing your flight. This is an awesome disc. And my Escape is the one that actually replaced it for me. Very, very similar shape to the Escape now that I'm looking at it. It's got just a strange bevel here at the very end of the rim here. It's kind of like a faster Leopard is what it looks like with that little notch there. But it fills the hand. It's not uncomfortable having that strange concave bit there. Shape is good. The Firebird. Debatably one of the most popular discs of all time. This is... I'm just going to loop right back. Everybody needs an overstable 9-speed, and this is most people's choice for that disc because you can get Firebirds that you can bomb, and you can get Firebirds that are very, very dumpy. I imagine this one being as flat and as stiff as it is, this one's going to fade a lot harder than your average Firebird, so you kind of know in your hand that you can trust this immediately. Great disc. The Roadrunner. It's another old man's delight. This one's 156 gram.
Got a couple of them.
Lightweights are where it's at. We'll be talking a little bit more about that later, but the understable 9-speed. This one's a 9.5 minus 4.1. A lot of people really like these for rollers to be able to really trust that it's going to hit the ground at the angle you release it on. So you release it right here, it's going to hit right there and then slowly stand up and end up to the right so you can judge how the disc is going to hit the ground, where it's going to end up, and start getting more distance and trust on these rollers.
I have an interesting take as I feel I've been in fairly good shape, but at the end of a round, sometimes I'll wear out depending on the length of the course.
Yep.
And sometimes Arizona sun will beat you down too, right?
It'll cook you.
What I found with the Roadrunner is when I notice when I get a little bit more tired during my round, that I'll catch myself throwing at more of an angle instead of upright.
You're kind of hunched over.
I'm a little more hunched over, which is going to throw that
natural hyzer.
That natural hyzer out there.
Okay.
And so when I'm feeling like that, when I'm sort of fighting it, and some days, and I noticed in golf, there were some days I could put a draw out there without even thinking about it, and get out there the next day, and the draw is gone. The natural draw was just, and my body just wants to throw fades out there where the ball's going to go left or right. And this happens at every level in golf, where these tour players are able to adapt to whatever their body's telling them they're going to be able to do that day. I believe the same in disc golf, and I'd love to talk to Ricky more about this, or some of the other pros.
Yeah, because their stamina is so good that they don't have those issues that we do.
It's incredible, but I'm sure that there's days where it's not releasing the way it should.
Oh, yeah.
How are they compensating for that? So my point is, when I'm compensating by taking out something that's more understable, knowing that I'm not standing up the way I normally do when I'm releasing, and I'm finding that is a great.
That's the fixer.
That's the fix.
Cool.
It's just figuring it out, right? It's years of golf and doing it, figuring it out. It applies to disc golf in such a similar way.
Well, there's so many similarities with this sport in golf already. Just going through it with you, having as much experience in golf that you do. But,
mentally.
Yeah.
It's between the ears, man.
The most important part.
It's so between the ears.
And I do want to ADD quick about your take on how pros compensate. One of the best pros at compensating is Paul Macbeth. Watching him play in the rain, if you get a chance to find a rainy round for Macbeth, he busts out the buzz. He's not throwing all these drivers like these guys are trying to get off the tee pad as much distance. Nope, he walks up, 50% power.
Throw down the mountain this year.
Yeah, that's right.
The tee pads, they were having some problems with the tee pads because they don't have the permanent pads in there.
That's right.
Permanent tees. And everyone was having trouble powering down except Macbeth. He was adapting, and he won that tournament. And he threw one of the best shots I've ever seen on one of those holes where it went dead straight, and then just had this
drift.
Yeah. That went. It was a par 4, and he parked it. Hit his head on the basket when he put it in.
Careful.
Par 4.
Wow.
Beautiful. And I'm looking forward to seeing that course on the tour. Not to squirrel away even further, but adapting is super important. And I wanted to throw that in because the Roadrunner is something that I actually used the other day, and it brought me back.
Wow. Okay.
So all of a sudden I'm throwing everything and I'm going to the left. I'm like, why am I doing that today? I'm not putting myself in the proper position I normally do.
And then you smartened up and changed your disc up.
So I just said, well, I'm not going to fight my body because my body is feeling this for whatever reason. So I'm going to use a less stable disc. And sure enough, boom, next one straight.
Well, there you go. If you find yourself having a hard time adapting, maybe try the flip up disc.
It could be both ways.
Either way, that's right. If you're overturning, try something else.
That's why having this diversity, I mean, the way the game is allowing players like myself who are coming into the sport, or players that have been in there for 15, 20, 25 years, what they had to choose from back in the day versus what they can choose from now really makes it so much more enjoyable now with this technology. Use it. There's a reason there's all these 9 speeds. You're telling us because some are going to go straight, some are going to go left, some are going to go right.
And everything in between.
Some have some ground play, some are not going to have ground play.
And some aren't going to work for you.
Yeah. It's a thinking man's game.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think that's what attracted me. I mean, having golfed as long as I have, that's a thinking person's game as well.
You got to have a strategy going in.
You do. You have to manage your way around, and your body's not always going to be the same day in and day out. So how do you fix that? And if you can't necessarily, if you're playing through pain, how many times do we hear about the players playing through pain?
Oh, man.
And they're going to have to adjust. They're going to have to adjust with their discs.
Yep. Eagles throwing lefty.
It's impressive.
Part of the game.
That was cool. Innova. I love Innova.
I'm partial. They're a great company, man.
It's Dave, man. That's the reason why we all have what we have.
Yeah, the Monster was my first favorite disc was the Monster.
He patented this modern day disc, and that's really what set all this in motion.
What do you got here?
This is MVP, and that is a stack.
The umbrella of MVP.
And I know there's also a Streamline. We'll start there. Yep. And we could even throw Mint in there too, but we'll leave them.
Mint probably should belong as well as Thought Space, I would think.
Yeah, and Thought Space as well.
Kind of under the same umbrella.
Right. I throw that, and I love it.
A lot of people throw this. I've even thrown this, and it's been really, really impressive disc.
Yeah.
Mine was really, really beat up. It was a gift from a friend, and I found it to fly a lot like a Sidewinder. Actually, it would effortlessly stand up and turn over. And this one had over 1,000 miles on it, so a brand new one's going to be much more stable than the one I had. But it is a real smooth flyer. I've seen a lot of these flying out there. I've seen yours fly. It is a
And that plastic is
Neutron. It's like the star plastic.
Yeah, but I find that it even after a year of throwing that, if I put it under some hot water and give it a little scrub, it looks
fresh,
like it came off. And we play in the desert. We play in dirt, rocks. It's hit
cactus,
every cactus.
Concrete. I mean, we hit all kinds of stuff.
And that's just the fairway, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a beating and comes back, and I tell you, it softened up a bit, but not much. It's so dependable. If there's any sort of wind, 10 miles an hour or above, I have no problem pulling that
you can
out.
still trust it.
Oh yeah, completely.
Not overturn it.
Completely.
Beautiful.
I can. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic disc.
Well, something to note here is almost all of MVP's discs are very, very flat. All these are very flat, and that's just part of their injection process. I think they have a hard time making a domier disc. So all these, if you're a flat guy, MVP might be your company. Flat discs tend to fit in the hand very, very well, especially for forehand. For me, I kind of like flat discs in the backhand, unless I'm throwing that 13-speed driver. Then I like dome to have the extra glide out of it.
Right.
But
yeah, streamline. It's
awesome
great.
disc.
Usually pretty good pricing on those too.
Oh yeah, they're $18.
Yeah,
that's what I'm charging at least.
Very reasonable because the disc lasts forever.
Yeah, until you lose it, really, or you get a thorn through it or something crazy.
No thorns getting through that.
Next up, we have the Insanity. This is another special disc to me. This was
another good old man's disc.
This is a good old man's disc, but also this would work for a veteran arm as well. It's very similar to the Valkyrie. 9.5 minus 2, 1.5 is the fade. They like their decimal points over there. This disc for me, man, I had a Proton that would really stand up and go straight for a long, long time, and then it would start turning over. It was a really cool late turn disc that I could really trust on the full power to not just turn and burn, but to really carry up.
Right.
So to have a flat disc with glide is really special. So
yeah, the Insanity is great.
That's a great disc.
I have it in a couple of different molds and
a couple of different plastics.
Plastics. Yeah. And it's they both fly very similar. It was my longest flying disc for quite a while, just because you're getting that wonderful turn out of it and just a little bit of that comeback.
It is a smooth flyer.
It is a really smooth. It's surprisingly long.
Yeah, sneaky.
I challenge anyone, if you got a big arm, you throw it out on a hyzer, that thing is, I'm telling you, it is a glider.
It will bomb.
It will bomb. It's a secret bomber.
Well, next up on the docket.
Not throwing this.
The Virus. You haven't thrown a Virus.
Haven't.
So this one is, from the reviews that I've gotten, is not as understable as the flight numbers will let you believe. They call it a 9.5 minus 3.5 1 fade. The difference on it has a much more concave rim, and it's got a much higher shoulder on it than the Insanity does. So it looks like it would be more overstable in my mind, which maybe that's why people don't turn it over as much and they come back.
Did the Virus come out after the Insanity? Because I mean, I feel like I beat in my Insanity enough where it turns as much as I want anything to turn.
Well, to be honest with you, I actually don't know when the Virus was released compared to the Insanity. Not 100% sure on that one. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, no worries.
The Inertia. This is the MVP Insanity. Very flat. A little bit more of a concave rim than the Insanity has. Flight numbers are 9.5 minus 2.2. And I just got to say, outside of the mold of this one and how cool of a disc this is, the plasma plastic, I think, is some of the best on the market. This stuff holds up very well.
Yeah.
The stuff on the outside, not so much, but this plasma plastic on the inside is just as durable as you could ever want a disc to be. It's really impressive. Inertia, really nice straight flying disc. As much turn as it does fade. That's kind of what you want, is a disc you can trust. The Tesla. I hear a lot of good things about the Tesla. I wasn't a huge fan of this disc, but man, a lot of people say this is one of their favorites. Going back to trust, I think it's because people can trust that it does have a true -1 turn and a true 2 fade.
What are the numbers?
It's a 9.5 minus 1.2. So a lot of these guys are forehanding it and backhanding it, so they can use it as kind of a utility that way. They can trust it to get max distance with by pumping it out on the Anheuser and slowly fighting out of it.
That was my first disc I used on
the forehand.
On the forehand.
How did it work for you?
Great.
It speaks for itself.
It does. It's a great disc, and I, to your point about having that flatter mold feels good in the hand on a forehand. And your thumb, everything feels comfortable.
Yes. Well, I know a lot of guys on their backhand prefer flat too. They just can't do the domey disc.
Yeah.
And something with the thumb higher up on the plate like that, here it fits the hand really, really well.
Yeah, I agree.
Next up is the MVP Firebird, aka the Motion.
It's incredible how many discs they have.
Well, yeah, the MVP lineup is really impressive.
The 9 speeds.
Yeah, this one's got a almost splice look to it with the shoulder very, very high parting line, super flat, super stiff. 9, they give it a 3.5 glide, 0 turn, and then 4 fade. Give it a 4 fade, and I would definitely believe that this thing is going to, out of your hand, push down into the ground and skip and do some crazy stuff and really tumble and push. Really great for windy days. Really great for ground play. This is the Impulse, MVP Impulse. 9.5 minus 3.1. This is very, very similar to a Sidewinder. I'd say that the shoulder's a little bit higher and the parting line comes down just slightly lower and not as sharp on the edge as a Sidewinder is. So it kind of fills your palm a little bit, having that extra little bit of roundness on the outside. So what's that
versus the Virus?
It's very similar to the Virus, although the Virus has some mixed reviews on stability. So the shape of it is pretty different. The shoulder's a little bit higher and a little bit rounder, and the bottom is almost identical to each other. Although I know a lot of people really like this Impulse for doing what the flight numbers suggest it's going to do.
Right.
The Virus, I know, has some inconsistencies to it.
Okay.
And now we've made it through MVP. Do you want to highlight your Spartan since it's kind of under that?
Was that the last one?
Yeah.
Diamondback, Mint.
The Mint Diamondback. This was known as a Thunderbird. I've had I threw this for a momentary period because I was so obsessed with the Jackalope that I had to try the next thing in the lineup, which was the Diamondback.
Right.
Overstable 9. It's really flat, really stiff. It's made in MVP's warehouse, so you know it's some of the best plastic you can get. I wasn't a huge fan of this disc. I found that for hearing the flight numbers supposed to be, I think someone told me they were 9.5 minus 1, 2. So I expected a bit of a neutral flight out of it, and it didn't really turn over for me. It kind of...
It's hard to turn that disc over.
I could not turn it over,
yeah.
And I kind of expected to a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I would throw it flat. After trying the 20 to 15 degree hyzer, I tried it flat, and it pushed to the right and didn't fade. And it stayed in the air for a long time. So I was a little disturbed, like, why could I not find the in-between on this disc? I'm not the only one that's had an issue. I've had a couple friends say that they had that same thing, where they couldn't find a good release angle to get it to do what they thought it was supposed to.
Got a little mind of its own, then.
Kind of, yeah.
So it might have to do with, do you think wind really affects it maybe more than other discs?
And there might have been a wind in the fairway that day that I just didn't account for.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time that's happened.
So we have one more, actually, MVP with the Fireball.
One we kind of missed.
Nope. Yeah, we'll get back to all those. So the Fireball.
Fireball is a Firebird from Axiom. It's a really, really overstable 9-speed. My employee here at Zach really likes the Fireballs. He makes them look pretty good on his forehand and his backhand.
What are these numbers?
9303. Well, they call it a 3.5 glide, 0 turn, 3.5 fade. So pretty similar to the Motion. They give it a tick less fade. Does it really have that tick less by the looks of it? I don't think so. I think this is a complete dumpy disc. Really good for forehand, backhand. It feels amazing. Again, these guys are really impressive with their stuff.
Yeah, I see it. I see it a lot.
Everybody's throwing it for sure.
Discraft, the Raptor.
The Raptor. It's another
famous disc.
Another meat hooky disc. It's a Firebird. It's got a much bigger edge here. It kind of rounds down and comes down flat. That's something to really fill your palm with. I really like filling my palm with the disc, and when it fills in, it kind of feels like I got a bit more surface area on the disc to really give it a lot more snap. Kind of what I like to feel. Really overstable. 9403 they call it.
Wow.
The fifth number on here is their stability rating. They give it a positive 2.1, and I think that's some of the most I've ever seen on their original flight number there.
And the last would be Lotes.
Last but not least, the Castoplast Lotes.
I beg it.
This is a cool disc.
It's a great disc.
It's an awesome disc. It's kind of Thunderbirdish, being that it's overstable and glidey, so it's really trusty on all angles.
Yeah.
You see guys that have big arms that bag Castoplast really turn this thing over and make it look like a full-out distance driver. I've got a pretty decent arm, and I don't turn these over. They just kind of hang on to whatever line I put them on.
Yeah.
And they glide very well.
Is it Stacy Ralston? Ronsley. Sorry, Stacy.
She's great.
I've seen a few videos of her throwing that. Quite impressive. But she gets it to push forward really well and can count on that fade at the end.
If you like Castoplast, you like the Lotes.
Yeah. The Falk and the Lotes are just two of my favorites. I just love them.
They're great discs.
They really are. Castoplast done a great job. This was Remix, which is available on Amazon, and the pricing on these are usually anywhere between $12 to $14. But the plastic is,
it's that MVP plastic, man. That's good stuff.
It is an MVP product. It's kind of interesting. There's a few different Remix molds out there. We don't know if they're putting one meshed with another or if they're overruns or what they are, but that one flies like a jade for me. It feels maybe a little bit more stable jade, but it's got a lot of float to it. I find that it can hyzer flip, goes dead straight.
So to me,
350, no problem.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah, that seems like a maximum flying disc for sure. To me, it looks like it's got the bottom of a Mantra, and it almost has the top of an Impulse here with how high it comes up. But it's got the wider rim, so this actually curves out pretty nicely here.
Yeah, it's a good feeling disc.
Great plastic.
Yeah,
great
I know.
mold.
That's just it. When you're out here and you're playing in the desert and it's hitting rocks, it's like, I don't know if I want to bring my $25 disc out to the park today, and this is $12 and it's going to do roughly the same thing. It's been beat up, and this thing, again, look how clean it is.
Pretty fresh.
It is.
No chunks or gouges.
It's got a lot of miles on it too. I like that Spartan.
You love to see it.
Yeah. Well, that was one heck of a performance there, mister.
Yeah, that was a lot. I hope I probably didn't iron it out as good as I hoped, but
well, I think what we want to try and do is let everyone know that, it's not always in the 12 speed. The answers aren't always in the 12 speeds. They're not always in the 13 speeds. These 9 speeds get out there.
They're very usable for every shot shape.
They just seem like if you're going to minimize your bag, a 9 speed is a great way to do it.
Yeah, focus in on those.
Yeah. If you can bang these things out 450, I mean, you really have to question, what else do you need above it?
I've been pretty stubborn, and I don't want to throw much faster than the 9s.
Yeah.
Because I really like making them work at the 400-foot mark.
Yeah, and it's nice having that consistency. Like, you kind of know, you get to know your course, and you get to know where, that sweet spot is for landing that disc and coming into the basket. And I just find, I think this would be useful for hopefully a few people out there to maybe consider it, because there's certainly some options.
Yes.
We haven't even touched on everything. There's still Legacy over there in the corner.
Oh my God, we've passed right over it. Legacy.
And I know it's a hard-working company. It seems like they're out and about, and they've got a following here in Arizona.
They've got a lot of molds, and I don't really know much about these things. I haven't really ever bagged any Legacy. My dad used to bag a couple different discs. This next one I'll highlight. This is their version of the Firebird 9304, the Enemy, and the Icon plastic. This, to me, it feels different. It's definitely not your run-of-the-mill Star plastic. It's nice and tacky. It's really stiff, and I've heard that the Legacy plastics tend to lean more overstable than the flight numbers let you believe. So this being an overstable mold in an overstable plastic, If you really need a meaty disc, maybe try some Legacy. I know their Recluse is crazy overstable. This is the one my dad really liked. This is a Bandit. Very, very similar shape to a Valkyrie. This little notch right here in the rim is just a little bit higher up than the Valk, and it comes down not as far of a point. The flight numbers are 9.5 minus 2.1, which is why my dad liked it. He could really trust this to glide a lot farther than some of his other 9 speeds. So he really liked the Bandit. Again, really stiff icon plastic. The Mongoose. This one I ordered because of popular demand. A lot of guys really liked their Mongooses because it's got Sidewinder numbers, 9.5 minus 3.1, and it doesn't quite look like a Sidewinder. This is perfectly flat, and the parting line is kind of high, and it's got a very brickish, kind of like a splice on the outside where it comes straight down. Not as dramatic as a splice, but kind of fills the hand really, really well. Where it has that extra space on the outside, I think it fits perfectly in the hand.
Feels good. The plastic kind of feels like Lone Star to me.
It does kind of feel like Lone Star, huh?
Yeah.
I could see that. Good comparison.
Thank you.
And that's all of the 9 speeds.
Lone Star didn't have any 9s?
They've got a Chupacabra over there. That's all I had.
Chupacabra.
Which is basically a Firebird, only theirs came out really domey.
Okay.
Very strange. And I know they have other 9 speeds. I just don't have them in stock.
Well, excellent job. I think that's enough for everyone's cranium for the night.
Yeah, my brain hurts a little.
You went after that.
I'm stressed.
Well done, man.
Need an ice cream to calm down.
Well, let's segue into kind of what's been going on in the world of disc golf.
Consistency.
You want to segue into consistency?
I think we should talk about consistency. I think it's the most important part about the game. And that kind of rolls into the mental aspect of it. But every player that plays disc golf knows their game, and they can see when it's not quite right. Like your body can feel good. You could feel confident. You could sleep really well the night before. You could be really well hydrated. You get on the tee pad and go to throw your shot, and it doesn't quite go as you thought it would. You're sitting there visualizing your shot and trying to find that consistency that you found in the field yesterday. It doesn't quite translate with the muscle memory. Something happens to every single player in the game. Right. But you kind of lose your focus and you don't have that same consistency that you found at one point in the field doing field work.
That's where I think you get the top 20 in the sport that can, on the fly, in a tournament, make the adjustment, whatever it is. So let's say the body isn't wanting to do something. So instead of trying to fight it, they'll fix it. Like, maybe it's not a great analogy, but me just changing to a road runner, something a little more flippy, because for whatever reason I'm throwing everything's coming out on a hyzer.
Yeah.
That day, when I normally throw everything flat or even an anhyzer, more of a feel.
Right.
But for some reason today, my body just wants this. This is the way it's coming out. So I'm adjusting by changing my disc out. But I think the reason that the cream rises, is that they have that ability to tap into whatever it is, if it's a disc choice or if it's a mental side of it or if it's knowing their bodies that well, that they can adjust to that inconsistency.
So in that moment, they can kind of pluck out what went wrong. Because there's a thousand things that can go wrong, right? And they can just maybe find it and fix it.
Yeah, or play the higher percentages better than the others in that same condition, where someone may try to do something and force it.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, I'm not going to force that today because I'm not feeling that today, so I'm going to play a higher percentage shot.
I'm going to do the thing that works.
That I know I can probably get away with.
There you go.
Right?
Okay.
So that goes back to a mental game.
Yep.
That goes back to clear head, of focus. But everyone feels that. You can go to a field, and I'll compare golf to this. You go to a driving range, hit 500 balls a day for a month. Go to the first tee, hit a great drive. Okay, but now it's not going to be the same situation as it was on the driving range, because maybe
Your angles are all
your
different.
angles are changed.
Yeah.
Okay. No different in disc golf. Okay. So maybe you work something out in the field, but now your second shot, you're like this, or you're throwing uphill, or you're throwing downhill. There's these variations, and you've grooved this thing.
You thumped one note the whole time.
Right. And that one note isn't going to carry into all the other notes that are required to play the game.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
You have so many shapes you need to do.
Correct. So what I found in developing my golf game early on was to use a variety of shots. I would go and not just hit from the flat part of the range. I would go, usually ranges have this slope. I would go down to the slope and hit shots off of the slope. I'd go to the other side and hit shots off of the side.
Oh, wow. That's a whole nother level to field work.
But that's where you get as you elevate your game, right?
Yeah.
You put yourself in the positions that you find yourself in reality when you're playing.
Yeah, there you go.
And none of them are ever perfect. So
smart.
If I can get used to how I have to come through that shot with the ball below my feet and everything else, and in that case, you really have to keep your head still. If you move your head at all, it's more likely you're going to move your head if the ball's below your feet, and it's going to go dead right. But unless you know that,
yes,
you're going to struggle, and that's what makes golf, I think, so hard, is those nuances with your feet positions. You really do have to.
Right, when you're higher up in the ball and you've got your club, which is measured to a distance for the tee.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you've got to go 6 inches lower.
Right. It's a much harder position to come at it.
I never even thought about that.
And your head position is even more critical.
Yeah.
You have to keep your head so still in golf, but in that situation, it's even more critical that it stays there. And then then your foot position has to change. So no different in disc golf, right? So if you're on hills, or you're downhill, you're side hill, you have to compensate
and find what works in that moment.
And that's where I find disc golf is way harder than golf, because you're stationary in golf and you can make that adjustment.
That's right.
And it takes a lot of reps to get there. Don't get me wrong.
Sure. No shortcuts.
Years of reps to get there.
Yeah.
But disc golf's no different. You have to put the time in those bad situations to be comfortable in those situations,
to find consistency in all the odd spots that you end up in.
Right. So that's where field work is great. If you're trying to find extra distance, sure. Okay, great. Go out there and
wear your arm out.
Try and find that extra 10 miles an hour if you can, because that will help. But in the overall game, it's just a small part of it, right?
Yes.
And
I sit in here and I'll throw 500 putts in a couple hours, and then I get out to the course and I'm airballing everything.
Why?
What just happened? I was drilling outside the circle putts all day.
Right.
I felt it. Things were feeling so good, and it's different to translate when you got all that blood flowing in your wrist and your arm, and you just kind of have that power in here.
Well, that's really true.
Well, then all of a sudden you have one shot, the important shot.
This is tournament it's not going to be the perfect flooring. You might be like this, you might be like that. The wind's coming at you, the wind's coming behind you.
That's right. Yeah.
All
which variable.
So it's very important to get the reps in.
Yeah.
Because you need the muscle memory. You need to be able to, when you get into flow state, in any sport, it has to do with that muscle memory. It has to do with
you've been here 100 times before.
Having so many reps in, and all that day, luckily, and it happens even to, it doesn't matter where you are on the scale, you're going to have periods where all of a sudden I'm just thinking about where I'm throwing it and I'm not thinking about anything else. That is so weird. That's a flow state.
Yeah.
You found it. You've tapped into it.
You don't have to think about it.
It's hard to get back to it on a consistent basis.
Yeah, when you lose
to your point, consistency.
And I think that, of the consistency, I think that's where some of these major players, they hit that flow state more often than we do, because they can really pinpoint all the issues that happened with their bad shots. They can find it immediately.
I don't think there's a shortcut in disc golf, just the way there's no shortcut in golf. I think the Kleins of the world, and seeing how he's come back from his injury this year and just really gave Ricky a good chase in the championship. He's clicking, and I hear he's a hard worker.
I can see that. It definitely translates to his game.
So I see someone like him out in the field where he's doing exactly that. He's not standing on a flat. he's moving around. He's trying different shots, getting on the knee and trying 20 shots this way, getting on the knee, excuse me, and trying 20 shots that way.
He'll practice in the wind. He'll practice in the rain.
Downwind, upwind,
Yes.
sidewind, like using the different discs and different shots. That takes reps. It takes days, weeks, months, years of practice. And then if you have the mental game, I honestly think that the mental development comes from reps. It does. I think your confidence. Did I work hard enough on what I need to work on? And there's going to be guys who are just ball strikers or throwers of the disc. You know, they can live in the field. They're hard workers. It doesn't always translate to a good score, though.
No, I think one player to bring up is actually David Wiggins. David Wiggins Jr. He's not that old of a guy, and he's got several times he's broken the world record for distance. He can throw so far with his crazy whip that he can get on this disc. But I've never seen him on a lead card.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he gave the game up for a while too, didn't he? It was always kind of a no?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure, actually.
Well, what about the Castoplast? Luke
Sampson?
Heard he's a hard worker. Heard he puts a lot of field time in.
I would not have guessed that.
Really? Okay, so I don't know what I'm saying.
I don't know. I've only ever met him once. He came by here with a bunch of Castoplast that he was amazing of him to sell me some Castoplast when I was just thirsty for it, when I was begging to get it on my walls. And he was nice enough to let me buy up some of his inventory. And he was a very sweet guy. He's tall, muscular.
Yeah, he's like an Albert Tom.
Yeah, he's an Albert Tom for sure. Big tall white guy.
Well, I'll say this. It's surprising to me when you have that kind of talent, like Albert, like Luke, but they're not in the pages of any of the stories this year.
No,
they've got all the talent in their finger than we all will ever have.
But you don't ever hear their name on tour.
Right? So what's going on? Why is there inconsistency there?
Yeah, what's going to get them back on the horse?
Right.
You know they can score well. They've won tournaments. These guys aren't exactly slouches.
But that's your point you're bringing up, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
You feel good, everything's working.
You're working hard for it.
You get to the first tee, you're ready to play, you're hydrated, everything's going, but then shank. Why?
And I think I wanted to really ask listeners, what gets you back on your horse when you're not feeling it? Because for me, it's just been getting out and playing more. You can't just quit. I just got to get back out there and put your chin to it, man.
You got to fight through it. Yeah.
That's the only thing that's worked for me.
Hard work's the only way.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Through. The only way.
It's not something that's just a momentary fix where you're like, oh, yeah, there it is.
It's the only way through, and it's no different, I think, in any sport. You know, if you're a wide receiver in the NFL, all of a sudden, you know, you're dropping balls. Okay?
That's your job, man, is to catch.
Right.
And when you can't do it.
So are you going to take the week off and maybe just focus on feeling better about yourself or whatever? No, you got to put reps in. You want 100 footballs thrown at you in all different positions from all different speeds and circumstances, and just drills.
Yeah.
It's the only way you're going to get through it and get your confidence rebuilt. And that's the hard thing about sport, is that you can have all the confidence in the world and it can be taken away in a blink of an eye, and you don't have any reason or explanation for it. Like, I just worked so hard this last month for this tournament, and I'm at the 9th hole, I'm 4 over. Like, how did that happen? How did I get two double bogeys on the front 9 of this tournament I've been training for a month? How did that happen?
I know my shots.
You overthink it?
Yeah.
Probably. You put too much pressure on yourself?
God, the pressure, yeah. Usually the butterflies typically help. Sometimes the stress helps me going into the round. I know a lot of people it works in the opposite direction, but
it depends on how much you're in it. Like, it will work in the opposite direction if you're not really used to it, right?
I suppose so.
Right.
Maybe if you're taking that into credit more so than your shot.
I heard Will Schustrick talk about this after the U.S. DGC, he mentioned how you can be in front of people and having a conversation and sort of forget where you're at in the conversation, totally lose your train of thought.
Yeah.
Well, it's no different. In his explanation, it's no different sometimes where you can get up to a shot and all of a sudden lose your whole train of thought. Where did it go? Like, I'm prepared myself, I'm in the right position, I know how to get it there, but all of a sudden you can't perform. Like, something happens where your brain says, no, it's too much stress, I'm going to click it down a notch.
You drew the blank.
But your body still wants to do it all. Yeah.
You kind of have to do it. You're still in it.
Right. Yeah.
You can't just retract.
That's a real thing, and I don't know if any of us have an answer for it. I just think that the better players find a way to tap into solutions that come from hard work and playing higher percentage shots. Don't make a mistake and follow it with another mistake.
God, that's so important.
So important. I know I've said it before, but you can't preach that enough. If you get worried about someone else and what they're doing, and you feel like if you get behind another hole here, I'm not going to be able to catch them, and that is the worst. To get out of your management game plan
right.
is really a bad habit.
And I think we talk about game plans a lot too, and how important that game plan is.
Yeah.
If you start deviating, you're going to start making mistakes.
Yeah.
So that I think it has a lot to do with consistency right there, is dialing in your game and understanding the course to your game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you have to. The pressure is always going to be there. You want the pressure for sure. Mm-hmm. We seem to see, this pool's getting so deep now on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. It's wonderful, both FPO and MPO, that we sort of feel like, okay, I've never seen anyone really predict on any of the YouTube post-production shows, anyone's predictions really sort of nail. It's
you can't.
It's really hard. How are people feeling? It's like picking horses, right? Before their races. How many people win the Kentucky Derby every year in and year out by picking the winners, or the top 3 or the top 5?
Right.
It's really a hard thing to do, almost impossible. It's no different in sport, and especially individual sport, because you just don't know.
Well, when there's 200 players,
and
they've all got a shot,
and they're all good.
They're all really good.
Yeah. And you can get some guys can go off and get in that flow state for the weekend, and they win, and you don't hear from them the rest of the year. It's a weird thing.
It is a weird thing. That's why you see like the top guys in our sport, the Rickies, the Calvins.
They're rare.
Persistently
they're
finish
rare.
In that top 10.
They're rare. But that's why they're paid what they're paid too.
It's true.
You own a company, and you're looking for representation, and well, I kind of like the consistency of this person.
He's got much higher odds to reach a lead card, which reaches a bigger audience.
My brand is going to be on television every week because this guy makes cards. That's important. That's really, really important. It's a lot of pressure, again, on anyone trying to make a living doing this, but
for sure.
But that's the reality. Simple as that. And we're coming into contract season.
2023, man. It's going to be a complete shakeup.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of exciting stuff.
I do too. With House of Discs, what they're up to, my guess would be they're going to take this thing public, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself on why I think that, but I do, because I think that they're collecting up really good companies.
Oh yeah.
And they're, you've got MVP, Innova, Discraft. Of course, there's Lone Star, there's Legacy, there's all the others outside of it. Mint, even these up and comers. But how do you take on
the megas?
That big of a conglomerate. It's a really tough thing to do. It's going to be even harder to do going forward.
Well, going forward, we're just going to look like golf. I think there's only really 6 big companies in golf.
That's correct.
I think that's what disc golf's headed towards.
Yeah.
And I think it's been headed towards that way for a while now. And now with the growth, it's hitting pavement. It's time.
Yeah. And you're going to have I think these contracts, you're not gonna see the in my opinion, you're not going to see the Ricky contracts. You're not going to see the Simon. You're not going to see the Paul contracts. You're going to see more of a corporate structure where, like a valued employee, like a vice president type employee, if they bring that, like a Calvin, like a vice presidency sort of salary.
Okay.
Whereas it isn't going to, and then I'm sure there's like added bonuses in terms of performance. That's an easier way to do it. Like, we're going to give you this great base. You're on our team. You're in the family, and you have a chance to make more. This isn't a ceiling type thing. But I think for a lot of players coming in, that'll be the same. But I think that structure will become more corporate structure instead of more whimsical as to
$1 million contracts, right? The big deals.
I just don't see it. I don't see the sales are down in discs
a lot, 30% from last year, which is massive.
That's big, and that's going to affect all of this, all of it. Now, you're still going to get re-signs. You still need your players out there doing their thing. So not to worry there, but I don't think you're going to see any sort of bumps in terms of, and I think it's very interesting that there's only a few salaries that we really know about.
No, a lot of it does seem kind of,
it's very under the
cloak and dagger.
It is very under the radar. And I know this is a tight community, so I'm sure it's not shared with each other, even if you're traveling with someone all the time, week in, week out. Like, what are we getting paid over
What
there?
are you getting paid?
It's sort of well, it's a rude question to ask, but
it's private information.
It is.
I mean, Drew Gibson had a deal with Infinite Discs that was supposedly multi-million, but they wouldn't tell anybody how many millions or how he gets paid. It wasn't one big lump sum. It was just a multi-million lifetime contract is what he got.
Really?
Yes.
Drew?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was right around the Paul and Ricky $1 million deals.
Okay.
Right around the same time.
Well, hopefully we see him in 2024.
Yeah, let's see what he's doing. I haven't seen him in a while.
He slipped away after Vegas. He got hurt, didn't he? He had something with his arm. He got fixed. Don't know.
My memory eludes me.
Okay. I don't know either. But I have no idea that was the case.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not taking anything away from Drew. Obviously, he's a recognizable figure in the sport. Throws it a country mile in a very cool way.
Still young too.
Yeah. He put some weight on. He looks stocky. He looks like he's he's going to be able to manage as he gets a little bit older with keeping up. These courses are all 10,000 plus now, right? And the Disc Golf Pro Tour is not going to.
They're not going to shorten up now, are they?
No. And if they want to continue with gaining audiences at the events, they've got to. It was interesting with Nevin in the Tour Championship. If you don't mind me talking about that for a second,
let's go for it.
I think anytime you have a abbreviated field like this, and I know it's special to get invited to this, and as a player, it's got to mean a lot, and it's very cool that they're playing for the amount of money they're playing for. But from a spectator perspective, I want to sit at a spot and watch the best players come at me for hours. I don't want to see three groups come by.
Yeah, I can't really do that with three cards.
I'm not going to take my day to go see three groups go by.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to fight with a few hundred other people to go walk through the woods and see a few shots. There isn't the dollar value in that that I can see. They've got to fix that in a big way if they even care about having spectators at these events. I think it's bad not to, because I don't like the optics of it when they're coming in on 18 and there's only 50 people around 18T. I don't think that's good for a tour championship and they're handing out a big check.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be
a gallery,
an absolute gallery, whether that's charging people or not charging people, marketing on the front end. I don't know if there's a budget to do that, but I think they should be in these cities a long time ahead of time, working with local companies, medium, large, whatever it is, and trying to get them involved. But I think the Tour Championship should have every player there. I do. And you've got the top that are going to win it.
Yes.
But I still think that you should have, if you want spectators, you got to have
the 200 pro field.
You got to have the field. You just got to have the field. It's I don't want to compare NASCAR to it, but because I don't really follow NASCAR, but it's the same where they have their Tour Championship, but every car is still there. It's just there's only 6 cars that really have a chance. But it's something like that where you're not going to get fans if there's 6 cars there. You're going to fill that 100,000 seat racetrack.
Not very exciting.
With 6 cars.
Yeah,
it ain't going to happen. And I sort of feel that this is the same way.
Well, I'm wondering what their advertising even looks when they come to town. Do they put out radio ads? Do they put up a billboard?
I don't know.
Do they tell the local disc golf stores, "Hey, we want to advertise"?
Well, you tell me. Do they? No.
Well,
no, I don't think they do. I think they're at present, and understandably so, because I think the Disc Golf Pro Tour has done a fantastic job. It's a better product this year than it was the year before. The live's really improved.
It has.
The courses that they're choosing are they seem to be really good venues. Their optics are improving all the time. But I don't think they have the staffing to, I think it's more of a reactive staff where they're expecting calls to come in and get bids or advertising dollars that way. I don't know how hard they're going out to, and they should be. I know if I was with them, I would be phoning Subway, I'd be phoning Nike, I'd be phoning every one of those major ones that you see that attach to other sports. I'd be going at them hard with this product because this is a great product.
Yeah.
And it deserves to get on that level. And
you think Barbasol reached out to them or somebody reached out to Barbasol?
Well, I don't know, but it's a good fit because a lot of the guys have beards. And
I bought a case of Barbasol.
Yeah, well, there you go.
You guys sponsor the Tour Championship?
Well, there's the loyalty. There's the loyalty, and that's a NASCAR thing. People apparently, if they have their favorite drivers and whatever's on the car, they're buying.
Yeah, if he's driving a Chevy, you better buy a Chevy.
It's crazy how that loyalty does work. And I know this community is very supportive.
Yes.
Within itself. But you can't keep wringing out this community.
You got to grow it.
You got to grow it. You got to grow it. And you got to go outside. And so they got to do some more proactive efforts in these communities with, I think, medium and large companies that are located in these areas. I don't know. I would love to have that conversation with Jeff Spring.
It would be great to
pick his brain, see what they're doing,
yes.
and certainly offer our 2 cents. I'm sure they don't care about that, but hey, look, I've been in business for 30 years, so there's things that I could certainly talk about that I think are relevant to growing the sport, and I care about this sport. I think it's one of the best sports no one knows about, and I know that in Europe it's becoming quite popular.
It's
in
massive.
Scandinavian, Norway, Sweden, and Finland.
Look at what the European Open draws for a crowd. The
Wonderful.
gallery is just impressive.
So wonderful.
And that's what I want to see. When I turn on the TV and I see Eagle McMahon throwing over 1,000 people, you can see the disc just flying over their heads, and they all just go like this.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's incredible.
It's cool. And if you've never seen that, if you've never seen a disc throwing 500 feet, it has a sound when it's going past you. It's so impressive. And sometimes they're not all like 20 feet off the ground. Some of them are 40 feet off the ground, and they're going 500 feet. It's
blasting.
How the heck?
Fizzing through the air.
Get it up there is one thing, but to get it pushed that far is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, it's 100 feet up and still going forward.
Yeah. There's so many videos out there about the power pocket and how to get there and do the, it's reps, man. There's no shortcut to this.
Find it for your body. There's no one right answer.
No, there isn't. There's some fundamentals that are key. Mm-hmm. In just like in any sport, if you're going to throw a football, There's fundamentals in throwing a football fast. There's fundamentals in hitting a golf ball 300 yards, and there's fundamentals in throwing a disc 500 feet. But again, I think the sport is certainly going in the right direction. I hope that these disc sales have, even though they've sort of flattened out and gone down a bit this year, isn't any indication of people looking the other way at other things. Because I think the product that's being put out by the Disc Golf Pro Tour is excellent.
Yes.
So, and it sounds like next year they've got a good plan for next year too. So,
things don't just grow huge overnight.
Yeah.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right.
They've been on a really steady track of improvement.
Right.
They're not going to stop now.
Right. Right. No. God, no. No. So I don't know what else to segue into. Maybe we'll dive into some contracts, and
we've got to go over some contracts.
I'll give you my 2 cents on. I know I just touched on a little bit about. I think this is the House of Discs. It's going to become more of a corporate structure for players.
Yeah,
it has to. I think Innova kind of already had that approach.
Seems like it.
And everyone was wondering if Innova was doing it right, and the others were doing it right by putting these $1 million contracts out there.
They caught a lot of flack for when they dropped Macbeth, and then they picked up Ricky, which was awesome.
Right.
But then Ricky left, and they caught a whole lot more flack. They were all looking at Heimberg.
Well,
they were expecting him to leave just about.
Yeah, no, he's locked in. He's got 5 years.
And he's killing it.
Yeah, he's great. So I think that may prove in the long run to be more of the, I don't know if it's
the right strategy.
The right strategy or not, but it's looking like it is. It's looking like it is. If we want the sport to continue to maintain and grow, because you can't put these disc manufacturers in jeopardy.
No, they've got to stay alive. Absolutely.
When the sport's growing 7 or 10% a year,
that's
not a lot of wiggle room at the end of the day. I know the plastic is profitable, but there's still a lot of overhead in this, and they do a lot of marketing of their products on all the different levels, which we've talked about, local and regional and national and international. So there's a lot of money in marketing going out on top of player salaries and staff salaries and everything else. So yeah, it's going to be I think it's going to be an interesting year. I think it's going to be fun to watch it, but I don't think it's going to be you think there's going to be a big shakeup. I think it's going to be less exciting only because there's less money.
Yeah, and maybe it won't. I think there will be a lot of shakeups, but you're right. It's not going to hit like the helicopter and Ricky flying out with his $4 million contract, right? We're not going to get any fireworks.
No.
But it will create a lot of interesting moves. There are moves to be made. And these players are looking at these manufacturers just as much as these manufacturers are looking at players.
Well, and we talked about it earlier, this young 16-year-old that popped off at, okay, you take the 10 players that you had at this salary, okay, and move them out and give her that combined salary,
chunk.
Right? Because they've had all these years to prove themselves and maybe haven't, and so you want to put your eggs more in that. So there's going to be these types of things that are going to happen. That Paige is coming up on her.
Paige's contract ends
this year.
Paige Pierce
this year.
At Discraft.
Now she had a good year before the leg break.
It wasn't bad, yeah.
She was winning. She was relevant. She had a lot of top tens. So, and I'm sure she didn't like sitting at home watching Kristen win everything. She seems like I know she's been in the sport a long time.
Yeah.
But a champion's a champion. They I don't think she's ready to hang up the discs just yet.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, I can't imagine her leaving Discraft.
Yeah.
Unless MVP pockets up and says, "Hey, Paige, check out our stuff." They're pretty much due for a new big player.
Well, here's why I think that's interesting, and could be a surprise because it hasn't been an extension yet.
Good point.
So, is she the best player in the world right now? FPO, it's debatable.
I would say no.
A few years ago, it was no question.
Absolutely. She was winning everything by a lot.
Different now.
Correct.
Right. Then you have that social presence. You have the
all that stuff's valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Legacy is valuable. Likability.
Look what Simon did. Simon's a very likable guy.
You mentioned that she's maybe less likable since her move.
I think so.
That's interesting. That's interesting. How many other people feel that?
I've spoken to quite a few.
Wow.
Owning the store here, I talk to people all day, every day about disc golf and the ins and outs.
Yeah, and I got to think that people at these at corporate also here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, great name. She's been a hell of a player for a very long time. A value wherever she goes, but you know, it's going to be interesting. Does this contract stay the same? Does it flatten out? Does it go down a bit? Is it shorter?
Well, a lot of people I think are going to end up re-signing.
Or does it become a legacy thing? Where they like a Paul Ulibarri doesn't he have something with Discraft now where it's as long as he wants to be there?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what they gave Dan Ginley. He's a local guy here, Hall of Famer, and now he's got to deal with Discraft for life. He still gets an allotment from them every year.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
It could be something along those lines too. So you never know.
Should I read off some names of other contracts that are ending this year? Okay, I'll just start at the top here. We have Gavin Rathbun, Jake Mon, Zach Melton, Jake Hebenheimer, Austin Hannum, both the Monahondo sisters, Valerie and Alexis, Aaron Gossage, Maria Olivia, Gavin Babcock, Katrina Allen, James Proctor, Lisa Fakis, Haley King, Bradley Williams, Holly Finley, Stacy Ronsley, just talked about her today, Chandler Kramer, Macy Vela-Diaz, Andrew Presnell, Missy Gannon, Maddie O, Sarah Holcomb, Eagle McMahon, Garrett Girthy, Gannon Burr, Casey White, Nicholas.
I think Girthy was re-signed through 2025.
Was he?
I think so.
Maybe I grabbed the list before that happened. Was that recent?
I think he just got an extension.
Good for him. That's not surprising. I would have pegged him to stay.
Yeah, no. He's a great ambassador to Vanova.
I think Jake Mon is one of those players like you were talking. He's kind of a young guy that a company could put their eggs into that basket and say, hey, man, you are a really talented future player. Same with Gannon. It's not a huge risk being that they're great players.
Well, the franchise players, they have that in other sports, right? You're the quarterback, you're a franchise player. Right. Bedard for the Chicago Blackhawks, he's a young 18-year-old Canadian who's going to be absolutely phenomenal to watch.
Heard about him.
He's fantastic. He's so talented. And so franchise player. So these disc golf companies might be liking that idea of franchise players.
It's really smart. I mean,
potentially it is.
I think that's what Prodigy was trying to do, give people portions of the company for playing for their brand.
Early on.
So that way they have the incentive to play well with their plastics.
Yeah. That's it's an interesting. I don't want to say it's a trick, but I know that.
Gotcha.
I know of companies that will offer percentages to employees if they put some tenure in and et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the day, it depends on how diluted that stock gets, like ownership and everything else.
There's personal experience with that.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to fillet the fish, so to speak. And contracts may seem very nice and glossy when you first read them, but when you find out that there's a lot of other people that have invested into that company that are going to get paid before you get paid. So what your percentage is isn't really what you think your percentage is, because it's a part of a conglomerate. It's part of other things, right?
It's a part of a mass. That number looks
it's very
really
complicated.
Nice. Yes,
it's complicated, but so be careful. Be careful out there.
You think Aaron Gossage will stick with the Discraft?
They need to keep him. He had a heck of a good year.
Yeah,
He's a great player. maybe the best forehand in the business,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he can throw a backhand
As far as anybody.
Anthony Barella.
Whew.
He can chuck them,
Yeah,
and
he can. Got a lot of power.
it's so cool to see. And I'm rooting for him. He just seems like a all around good guy. Yeah, they're going to keep him for sure. They're going to keep him. I would be surprised if it's less than a 3-year deal.
Okay, that would be definitely smart on Discraft's part because he's got a lot of golf to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I know forehand is not the best longevity in the game.
No.
But he seems, I mean, he's coming from a lineage of baseball pitchers that
Yeah.
pitch with just so much freaking heat.
Yeah, it's like the horse breeding, right? He's got good DNA.
He's got an elastic arm here.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah. No, but he's got a great backhand. He doesn't have to rely on that forehand.
Right. So he can adapt to a new game
Absolutely.
just like Lazat had to. So
and he plays well in different on different courses. Like he's popped off so much this year.
Mm-hmm. He really has.
Yeah.
He made himself very apparent this year.
Look at how hard it is to get on at least the last 2 cards of any pro tour event.
You're not just keeping up, you're pushing.
I mean, there's so many good players that are right on the money line cut, let alone up in the top 8.
Yeah.
It's week in, week out. So when you see these guys week in, week out like you do, it's talent.
Impressive, yes.
It's talent. It's being able to have a bad day, but not put yourself out of the tournament.
Right. So your mistakes aren't that big of mistakes.
Right.
Well, here's a bit of talent. Speaking of talent, James Proctor.
Great.
The teacher.
Yeah.
For Thought Space Athletics he's playing for right now.
It seemed like he added a few things. Like I know Infinite was there and Clash was there.
He does have a Clash sponsorship, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. But I know that's up this year with Clash. So does Clash keep him, or is it an Infinite deal, or is it a multi-brand?
He should go to Castoplast. That's where he should go.
So House of Disc.
Although the House of Disc thing, that sponsorships, I'm curious how that changes. I tried to ask Huntington how his sponsorship changed, and he was like, hasn't really. But yeah. I mean, they've been taken over, so things have to change, right? It's not, they've got their own way they want to run the company. It's not going to be exactly what Castoplast was doing.
Yeah, it sounds like Discmania is it was purchased, but they're still going to be autonomous from it to a certain extent.
Okay.
Which is interesting. But then again, that's just building a conglomerate. So
does Eagle stay?
Yeah, of course.
I can't imagine him leaving.
No.
But if he did, it would be a shockwave.
No.
That would create a splash for sure.
No, that would be a company dissolving a lot of contracts to bring him on.
Well, I think the only company that really has the pockets to buy a big player would be MVP. They're my top seller here. Everybody's throwing them. I know everybody I see out on the disc golf course has an MVP disc in their bag unless they're sponsored.
Wow.
So the stuff is extremely popular compared to some of the
other
brands.
And that's where Simon is.
That's where Simon is, and they're paying him. I'm sure they can afford to pay him.
So we're gonna have an Eagle line. Well, that's Simon's sort of paving the way. These good players are going to probably want not just, okay, that's great, we're going to have a financial agreement, but maybe there's some more of the legacy involved with product development and putting names on things. And instead of just putting your name on a disc that already exists, you create a line, because that's what Simon's doing with Axiom, right?
Well, that's what Paul Macbeth did with Discraft.
Right.
And Ricky had a bit to do with that slammer over there.
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of what you should be giving the best players in the world.
Right.
Some design capability, because they're the ones that are making the discs fly.
But I also believe that those contracts were probably written whereas that was a part of their guaranteed salary.
Yes. Okay.
So they're not making any additional cash on top of their guaranteed salary with all of these disc sales. I don't believe. I think that's a part of what's expected.
Macbeth's discs cost more than the other molds do.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine
it's a big contract. Right?
Yeah.
It's a big contract.
Suppose so.
Yeah. But they're still going to be playing incentives that are separate from that. And that's, I think, where they can they can make more in outside endorsements too. I'm sure they're allowed to get some of that as well. But the largest presence is going to be the guy that's paying you $1 million a year on your jersey, right?
Yep.
So, but
well, Gannon Burr announced that he was going to be leaving Prodigy.
When?
Not recently. This was a while back when Prodigy threatened.
Well, at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. When he announced it without
yeah
really going it over everything.
Well, we don't know what's been fixed there.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Prodigy made amends, or Gannon's still just licking his chops at that $1 million contract that he almost had.
I don't know.
He seemed pretty excited to leave Prodigy.
Just don't be surprised if Prodigy has a few tricks up their sleeve, but maybe it played out the way, to get the lawyers. Let's not waste a lot of money on lawyers, and let's, you were contracted through the year, meet your expectations. Maybe we dropped the ball in a few things. They seem to have fixed that. But yeah, I'm sure there was a phone call that was pretty tempting that allowed him to feel that way publicly.
Yeah. Somebody swayed him for sure.
Yeah. And it may have burned the bridge with that company, Prodigy. So, but
do you think he leaves or stays?
I think he leaves, but would I be surprised if he stayed? No. But I think they're pretty happy with Isaac, and I think that they see Isaac as someone who can carry the brand. I think he can be their franchise player. Gannon was certainly in that conversation because he's so darn good and so darn young.
Yeah.
But
their whole team is really good.
Yeah.
They've got a great team.
Yeah, they do. So,
so whether Gannon's a part of it or not, I don't think he'll stay.
I could see House of Dis picking him up. I think that's probably most likely. So, Eagle, and to have Gannon under House of Dis would be pretty impressive. MVP, I'm sure, is, I don't know.
MVP is going to pick up some players.
Yeah.
They are going to build a team like Discraft.
Yeah.
That's just a prediction. I don't know anything. What about? I'm really curious about this young man, Nicholas Antela.
Fantastic. He's got to stay with House of Dis because he's a European player. He's the best player in Europe right now. Young.
Wow. Yeah, young. So much potential. So good.
Likability off the charts.
Oh, yeah. Very likable guy.
Consistent. That putting, I think, will mature.
Yeah.
Because it seems to be his only Achilles heel is he misses the odd putt in circle one and misses the odd putt outside of circle one.
Got to finish the hole.
Yeah, but other than that, from tee to basket, he just seems like as good as it gets.
And you think he stays?
I think it would be a good sign to keep him. I think it'd be smart for them to keep him.
I feel like between Kyle Klein and Eagle McMahon, I don't know if Antela gets much shine with Discmania.
Well, House of Dis changes potentially some of this.
Sure.
Again, it goes into a corporate structure like that. I don't. It's not just Discmania supplying the bread and butter anymore. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can take some of little Paul's money and give it over to Peter, so to speak. Yeah. You can. So there's you've got venture capitalists like that typically are building the brand to the highest potential for an IPO. That's what I think happens. So I'm not.
So you're not fretting these contract changes hardly at all.
No, not now. House of Disc is making big moves, and
they really are.
I think the other guys are kind of scratching their head, going, "Oh boy."
Yep.
You
guys might take over a little bit.
Well, yeah. I think they're looking at a 5-year plan that puts them at globally one of, if not knocking off Innova, they're going to be right there. They're going to be big. because I think you're going to push the sport in terms of not just disc. I think they're going to go into course development, and I think you'll have more stores where they're putting products out there. Mm-hmm. They might do some bricks and mortar, or who knows.
That was their whole goal. That was their mission statement, was to build courses, build stores.
Well, there you go.
Focus on
there you go. Because look, as a business, that only makes sense that it goes there. Yeah. Okay. So they're going to be yeah, they're going to be tough to beat. They're going to hold whoever they want to hold, in my opinion.
Let's hope they hold Antilla.
They'll hold Antilla. They'll hold Klein, and they're definitely going to hold Eagle.
Maybe they should put them.
And last MVP as something that is just magic, but I can't. Well,
I mean, they're not done yet.
Yeah.
You guys are killing it.
They are killing it.
Every new run that they come up with,
they are killing
is
it.
An absolute home run. The Watt, been so popular.
Yeah, they're great.
The Glitch, the Hex, all those discs are newer.
MVP's amazing.
Disgusting.
Yeah, it's really good. They've run an amazing job, and even companies like Mint that are counting on MVP quality, they're just coming through in a big way. This is quality. I love a few of the Mint products a lot. The Jackalope is the best disc maybe made.
That was a big squirrel we did.
Well, put a bow on it.
I think so.
Boom. Episode 5.
In the books.
Well, we'll circle back. I want to talk about lightweight discs.
Lightweight disc is so important.
Featherweight.
That's important, the featherweights.
There's some cool stuff coming out for not just younger players. I'm talking about adolescent players or women or older. But these 140, 130s?
They're getting down there, man.
A destroyer for a 130?
136-gram destroyer?
Are you kidding me? I can't wait to get out and throw that.
Can't wait to tell you guys about it.
All right. See you guys.